This is Sybert signing into Red Alert Remastered on the map Arena Valley Extreme Mega. And if that's not a great name of a map, I think this is just a bigger version of Arena Valley Extreme, or maybe it has more money. One of those two things. At any rate, this is a decently big-sized map, one of the bigger ones of all of the ones that people play. Definitely one of the bigger ones. But in the top left-hand corner, as the yellow turkey, this is ELO. And in the bottom right-hand corner, as the blue/cyan, also turkey, it's DyNaMic. I assume this is the DyNaMic from Kane's Wrath that you may or may not be familiar with. However, there are three people in like the top 10 leaderboard that all have the name DyNaMic. So it's possible it's not the DyNaMic from Kane's Wrath and it's someone else. I don't know who ELO is. Both of these guys are playing Turkey. And I believe Turkey has like a 10% build time reduction across the board, which from my understanding basically means that everybody plays Turkey and there are a lot of Turkey mirror matchups. But we will see how this one goes. Great scouting from ELO. As you can see, a great spread of early riflemen across the map. DyNaMic kind of doing the same thing, but just a little bit less. I believe Shroud Regrow is off. It typically is, which means the map vision that you see here does not recede. So having just one-time scouts spread all throughout the map is a big advantage heading into the mid and late game. One refinery, double war factory opening for ELO, and honestly on a map like this, why the heck not? They're both getting out a couple of extra harvesters from their war factory, or at least one extra harvester, maybe just for DyNaMic. 2 extra harvesters for ELO in the north here. And then it's into some light tank production. And already with our first light tank sort of clashing here in the middle of the map, it may actually just turn into light tank spam between these two players, as someone, once upon a time, much earlier on in when Tib Remastered and Red Alert Remastered had just released, someone complained that one of the replays I casted didn't have enough light tank spam in it, and it wasn't realistic for what people would play on the ladder. And they're like, people just light tank spam on the ladder. And it's like, well, this is just a random game that I picked out, and I'm sorry it wasn't just light tank spam all day. But it looks like we may be getting our light tank spam here in this match. Decent spread on the map, but these two players converging right here in the middle. Light tanks from DyNaMic going to be striking first, and he's trying to get kind of a position over on the right side and then pushing further north. I don't know that this is actually going to work out in his favor with the reinforcements from ELO constantly meeting the forces of DyNaMic. Going to try and pull on down south, rotating out some of his weaker tanks and leaving the higher health tanks still on the front line. Although ELO, a little bit of a mix-up there as one of DyNaMic's tanks gets caught behind the forces of ELO for just a moment there, and eventually it does go down. ELO continuing with the superior numbers, but a number of these tanks very low on health for ELO, so those numbers could turn around relatively quickly as reinforcements from both sides continuing to stream in. $3 grand in the bank for DyNaMic, but only $12 in the bank for ELO. His economy severely hampered there for the last minute or so of that engagement, or for the last minute of the game, rather. Not so much that engagement lasted a particularly long time, but the cash in the bank really hampering the reinforcements of ELO. Now it's into medium tanks for both players. A little bit of a transition. Can be a little bit dangerous as you switch into medium tanks if you get overwhelmed. We have seen a number of times in the past a player with like way more light tanks being able to overwhelm a couple of medium tanks as someone is trying to put together a last-ditch defense, and it just does not work out, even though the medium tanks in a one-on-one would win. Elo splitting his forces, some lights and some medium tanks over to the right side while also keeping a contingency here in the middle of the map. And this may actually not work out in his favor. We'll have to see if he's able to do much damage with this contingency over here on the right side of the map while holding off DyNaMic's forces here in the middle of the map. DyNaMic with constant reinforcements does not respond to the forces of Elo particularly early. He's actually going to pull back his entire army from the middle of the map, taking a couple of extra shots there against the tanks of Elo. And, oh, this attack from Elo may be a little bit wonky as his tanks got spread out and separated. Lots of free damage coming off from DyNaMic, and DyNaMic will be able to stop this attack, but not before it cuts off his MCV. And goodbye, MCV. DyNaMic is pretty well set up with his eco and his production, but losing your MCV like that is never what you want to have happen. And Elo, that may have been the only thing he was looking to do, is to just kill the MCV in the short term and then draw the game out a little bit longer for the mid and long term. One last tank from Elo does survive, and now Elo is going to try and push on forward. As you can see, he's base crawling south to this new field of ore and gems, so that is going to be fueling his late game. And of course, DyNaMic is going to be stuck just on the production that he has in the location that he currently is. Medium tanks on both sides, but I think the numbers are a little bit better for Elo. DyNaMic may not actually have enough, but I don't know that Elo has enough to push through the forces of DyNaMic. An absolute mess and mayhem of tanks from both sides, and DyNaMic overwhelming some of the forces of Elo. He should be able to actually rout this army from Elo and push him back. Elo losing a lot of tanks here, just getting totally surrounded as DyNaMic pushes the front further north and further north. But reinforcements coming in from Elo, 5, 6, 7, 8 tanks coming in from Elo to try and reinforce this. And as DyNaMic's forces get kind of separated out by the geography of the map, Elo may actually be able to take advantage of that. DyNaMic still with better numbers overall as Elo has tried to expand down south. He's got a lot of cash in the bank, but he's not able to spend it. 7 grand sitting in the bank briefly, 8 grand there, but no tanks on the front line. Another wave of reinforcements coming in from Elo. A number of low health tanks right there on the front line from DyNaMic as DyNaMic turns to the left and heads for this expansion west of his forces. He's going to try and shut that down, and DyNaMic, if he's able to crush these harvesters, kill off these refineries, completely shut down the mid/late game play of Elo, that could be a big win for DyNaMic in this match. Constantly streaming tanks across, and with 7 grand in the bank, DyNaMic is going to be able to continue streaming tanks for quite a while into the base of Elo. Elo, without a real hope of stopping this, is going to maybe have to fold this southern expansion and just try and cut and run against the forces of DyNaMic. He's following him up north, but DyNaMic scoring harvester kill after harvester kill is going to cut off the advantage that Elo thought he had. And in this case, I don't know that DyNaMic's forces will win out the day in this one push. But actually, this push seems to never end. This is like a parade push as more and more tanks streaming out across the map. Elo with his MCV, with his base defenses, unable to successfully mount a real stopping defense against DyNaMic's forces, and DyNaMic actually just parade pushes his way to victory in this game. A constant stream of medium tanks there through the middle of the map like clockwork, coming across to hit the forces of Elo. And Elo just never was able to mount any kind of a defense. He ended up losing so many harvesters there in the last minute. And at that point, it was taking him so long to drive out, get the ore, and drive back that those ore trucks were so vulnerable to the tanks of DyNaMic. And that will do it for this game, a turkey mirror here on Arena Valley. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and this is Sybert signing out.